ABC 9:15 Media Watch.
Examines effects of mobile phones on health.
It's not often we get muddled with four corners. Welcome to Media Watch, which tonight explores the world of tireless self-promotion and all manner of delusions. Those Bibles, the TV guides, are terrible teasers.
SBS 10 o'clock, Prague.
A first-hand recording of the day Soviet tanks rolled into the Polish capital of Prague.
Prague, Warsaw, it's all much of a muchness to the West Australian. Accuracy may be on the wane generally, but it's found a champion in Tamworth's Northern Daily Leader, which is promising.
Speed, precision and eye for detail.
Sub-editing has changed remarkably in the last 20 years at the Northern Daily Leader, with computer technology involving full-colour vision, spell check and artistic enhancement.
The caption shows how brilliantly the technology works.
The sub-editor requires many skills over a brailleed range of disciplines.
These disciplines seem to be a feature of the media landscape right around the nation. There was this neat juxtaposition of news and advertising in the Courier Mail.
Lawyer entered sham deal to buy land, tribunal told.
The Courier Mail told us about a sham property loan involving a couple of solicitors and a company,
Excel Properties, which bought the land for $350,000 last year.
The news story was accompanied on the same page by
Incredible seaside land sale, Fraser Island View Estate, Harvey Bay.
And all brought to you by the friendly folk at
Excel Properties Proprietary Limited.
Well, that's a new approach to cross-promotion. Sophisticated marketing involves strategic placement. None better than to turn your product into a news story. Television's PR pushers have elevated this to an art form. Look at these headlines on a recent edition of Nightline.
More atrocities in Kosovo. NATO uncovers a torture chamber. No jail for former Liberal MP who rorted expenses. And TV's portrayal of single career women. Fact or fantasy?
The career woman story got another plug before the ads.
In a moment, television's single woman of the 90s. Paranoid, man-hungry and career-driven. Just entertainment or a realistic portrayal?
Or just part of a push for Sex and the City, the new series Nine has bought. Nightline attracts the right kind of viewers for a pitch on the new sexy series. Almost a third of its audience are between 25 and 39, and about half of them are women.
They're young, independent, career women, but they're single and neurotic about finding a man. They're also the stars of a new trend in television programs such as Ally McBeal and the latest hit series in the US, Sex and the City, to be shown on the Nine network later this year.
The promotion was wrapped up as a faux sociological study.
Why are there so many great unmarried women and no great unmarried men?
It's the lament driving American TV programs Ally McBeal and Sex and the City.
Spicy clips from the new show with a flash of the new titles and a probing interview with a sample of the target audience.
Are there women out there like that? Oh, yeah.
It bashed the competition.
Ally McBeal doesn't have any stresses of money. She doesn't have any stresses of career challenges. And I think that's unrealistic for the working woman.
And it pitched to the all-important advertisers.
What is real is the spending power of the demographic they're aimed at, making them a top priority with advertisers.
In that particular demographic, at the professional end, have got high disposable incomes. They've got possibly low commitments. They're earning lots of dollars. They're a key target for marketers, absolutely.
So the marketers know where to spend. In a soft advertising market and with declining audiences, the networks will try just about anything, including doing pretend news stories as a front for program marketing. Melbourne's Mighty Age is also going in for a bit of self-boosting in the face of flagging sales. Steve Harris, who's the publisher and editor-in-chief, kicked off an occasional column in his newspaper, whipping up its merits.
A good newspaper is tremendous value for money. The amount of news, information and ideas available in accessible form for, in the case of The Age, a $5 a week subscription is remarkable.
Harris's job blurs the line between marketing and journalism. He also quoted an American theorist who said,
Ideas and facts come from language, and when combined with the influence and rigours of print, they produce understanding and truth.
Well, there's one little bit of language that we're not entirely sure is rigorously applied. This front page story...
Australian held in US raid on child sex network.
...was branded...
exclusive.
And the story that deserved this gong?
A 35-year-old Alice Springs man was being held in an Arizona jail yesterday after he was charged with travelling to the US with the intention of having sex with a minor.
But the story really broke 11 days earlier in Alice Springs.
Net child porn. Alice man is arrested in US.
ABC Wireless in the Alice was onto it the same day and carried an interview.
Bernadette McMenamin is from ECPAT, a campaign set up to end the commercial sexual exploitation of children.
There has only been one previous arrest and conviction under this law of a US citizen in Latin America, so it's a relatively new law and newly applied law.
The Age exclusively cracked onto the same spokeswoman 11 days later.
Ms. Bernadette McMenamin said yesterday the internet had created a new type of child abuse.
The story was ignored when it ran in the territory media. It was only when The Age put it on page one and liberally applied the exclusive tag that it kicked off a flurry. According to Rehame Media Monitoring, 57 radio and television reports followed The Age in the next 2 days. The Prince got excited about it as well. And The Age gets all the credit. Now an update on a story we brought you some weeks ago. It concerns that lion of integrity on commercial radio, John Laws. You may remember we charted a remarkable turnaround in Laws' attitude to Australia's banks. He'd been a notorious bank basher.
So here's how it works. The bank makes $2.2 billion profit. The bank closes branches. The bank loses 2,500 staff. And then they do it all over again. When they go down to the bank, Uncle Scrooge down there behind the counter hits them with a fee. How can you do that, you people? I mean, how can you really do it?
Almost overnight, he became the bank's most prominent apologist.
You know, we do forget sometimes when we criticise them that banks are made up of people. So there you are. See, banks make very big profits. But are they unreasonable about it? Maybe not, when you know the whole story.
The shift came after a surprise phone call from the bank's chief lobbyist, Tony Aveling.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello, is that John?
Yeah.
It's Tony Aveling here from the Australian Bankers Association, John.
Hello, Tony. That's a surprise. How are you?
Aveling explained all he wanted was a fair go for the banks. But the man with the velvet throat wasn't easily won over.
Well, you kind of catch me on the hop a bit here. I haven't been one of the biggest fans of banks for a while. But, I mean, if the hard questions are asked, will they be answered?
We wondered how genuine this call was. But Laws used it as the public justification for boosting the bank's image in a new program segment called The Whole Story. It was underwritten by a sponsorship deal for Laws and the radio network, stitched together by his old mate, Bob Miller, who's a colossus in Australian advertising. Following our exposition of Laws flipping in exchange for money, the great man went to considerable trouble to explain himself. First, he went on the attack.
Some people have sort of taken a shot at me for telling the whole story on banking. It's been people who, I guess, haven't done as well as they think they should have done in life, so they pick up and have a bite.
Then to the defence.
There's nothing sinister here. There's nothing to be hidden. I am a commercial body. I am a saleable commodity. The bank's asked me to do a job, and I'm damn well doing it. And there is nothing sinister about it. You weasels, go away.
Laws has consistently maintained he was approached by the banks.
But the banks rang me, and the bank said to me, listen, if you're going to climb into us, what about you tell the whole story?
And again, on Radio National's media report,
I accepted the proposition from the banks that I was talking about telling the whole story. And the banks rang, in fact, on the air and said, well, why don't you tell the whole story about the banks?
However, a confidential document has come our way, and it conflicts markedly with Law's version of events. The document was prepared for the Council of the Australian Bankers Association, and it outlines the nature of the deal with Laws. It's written by
Tony Aveling.
Aveling, you remember, was also the voice on the surprise phone call. Aveling told the Bankers Association Council,
Miller approached the Australian Bankers Association at the request of John Laws to see if any banks were interested in using the agency, and in particular, Laws.
This rather flies in the face of what Lawsy's been telling everyone for weeks, that the banks came to him to get him to tell the whole story. Laws has also maintained publicly that while it's a commercial deal, his opinion hasn't been bought.
But John Laws, does that mean that your change in opinion about the banks was driven by a financial concern for this station or for you?
No, because my opinion of the banks hasn't changed. My understanding has changed, that's all.
But the proposal in the document is rather more hard-headed.
The objective is to reduce the negative comments about banks by John Laws from the present average of 4 a week to nil, concurrently to receive positive comments from Mr. Laws over and above the paid advertisements, and by doing so to shift Australians' perceptions of and attitudes towards banks.
So much for the much vaunted whole story. There always was a certain hollowness to Lawsy's explanations. The document claims the campaign would be handled by a new advertising agency.
The Dream Team.
A group which is comprised of our old friend Bob Miller and
founders of Mojo, Brian Morris and Brian Johnson, and broadcaster John Laws.
In his excitement, Tony Aveling got some of the names wrong. The advertising honchos are Alan Morris and Alan Johnson. There's no company registered in the name of the Dream Team, but Ad News magazine featured a report on the group when it got together last year. It described the working arrangements.
Laws will be working as the group's strategist, Miller the suit, and Mo and Joe will be creating the ads.
Tony Aveling goes on to inform the ABA Council.
The proposal by Bob Miller also relieves concerns on a second issue. Because the approach has come from the Laws side, there can be no criticism of banks.
Of course, Laws hasn't told his audience the whole story. Happily, the confidential ABA document that we're sharing with you gives us further insights into other aspects of this great commercial engine.
Since the last council meeting, NRMA Finance has signed a 1-year sponsorship package with John Laws. This expands the Laws blue chip portfolio that already included Arnott's, Samsung, Optus, Wild Turkey, Qantas, Toyota, Valvoline, Rosemount Estate Wines and Rams.
And now the Australian Bankers Association. Let's forget all the fudging. In the middle of a concerted campaign against the banks by the most widely listened to broadcaster in the country, his agents approach the ABA for a deal, and the drubbing stops. Such is the commercial power of the golden microphone. And just how much money did it take? There were 2 cost outlines in this document, headed
John Laws Proposal, Member Bank Contribution.
One proposal added up to $1.2 million, and the other to $1.5 million. No doubt your friendly banker's in there, pumping your hard-paid bank fees into the trousers of the mighty tonsils and his radio station. As recently as last week, Laws bobbed up on Triple J, trumpeting his virtue.
I've been around for a while, and I got to go to sleep at night, and I'm not going to be a whore. I'm not going to prostitute my beliefs to make people feel good.
Now we know more of the whole story. While Lawsy sleeps snugly tonight, we wonder whether his audience will rest so happily. And the banks may give some thought to extracting themselves from this mess. We'll be back next week. Good night.